Hello, YouTube! Today we are going over our first completed Wonderlands build, Goomba's Revenge. And with Goomba's Revenge, we ended up going Spore Warden with Berserker. So let's go ahead and get into the build. So the main weapon we are using, of course, is the Liquid Cooling. Right now, this is just one of the absolute most ridiculous weapons in the game. I did end up finding a Volatile ×2, and I rerolled until I got the Action Skill Start Increase Damage Anoint. We ended up getting the 20% for 20 seconds on this one. The Livewire is an absolutely amazing weapon. I'm using a Chaotic with increased elemental damage. While I don't mainly use this, I do really like using this for shock, specifically on bosses. So having the elemental damage on there for the increase on shock, with lightning, I'm gonna have to get used to that one. With lightning damage being one of the highest for its elemental matching bonus, it's nice to have even more of that elemental bonus against shields. On the Spriggan, the purple Hyperius and Dahlia SMGs, whenever you have a ×4, it is basically a Sandhawk from Borderlands 2. So I wanted to have that, and I was a little unsure on what enchant to have on that. Unfortunately, it is not going to be working properly because it is the same enchant we have on our armor. So this one, unfortunately, is not the best enchant. However, I have not got around to rolling that yet. So it is sitting on increased frost damage for action skill active. And we have a chaotic rain of arrows, which is on action skill end, increased critical hit by 50%. So whenever we get a critical hit after our action skill ends, the first critical hit we get is going to be 50% higher. And with the rain of arrows just doing a lot of damage in general, that just has a really high hit for swapping to right as your action skill ends to get a high damage. Now, with the rain of arrows, you do need to be careful because this does do self damage. So be careful whenever you're using this and not running into where the arrows are going off. The melee weapon, I went through a lot of different ones. I was unsure on what melee weapon I wanted to use or what enchant I wanted to use. Um, I ended up going with the Goblin Pickaxe specifically for its effect. So the Goblin Pickaxe melee attacks spawn gold. Whenever the Fate Maker picks up gold, you increase movement speed, spell cooldown rate, and action skill cooldown rate by 6% for 5 seconds, which does stack 5 times, meaning the max amount is 30%. Not only that, but whenever you are picking up crystals in the Chaos Chambers, that also counts. So you can get higher rates in the Chaos Chambers with those crystals. With the enchant on that, I decided to go with Action Skill Start, increase gun damage by 40% for 10 seconds, because this build is a lot about action skill damage. Or sorry, about gun damage. On rings, I went with ability damage, and for passives, I wanted ability crit for hit chance and crit damage. The third roll we ended up getting on that was melee critical hit damage, which is pretty nice. So whenever we get a critical hit with our Goblin Axe when we're using it, we do get some increased damage with that. And of course, whenever you're in a dungeon, those effects are increased by 25%. On the secondary one, I didn't really find any that had a main skill on there that I really wanted that also had passives I liked. And because we're using Blizzard, I wanted the duration and the cooldown to be higher. So we ended up going with the action skill cooldown rate and action skill duration for this slot specifically. On armor, you could get a more god roll armor. Specifically, rolls with higher Wrath of Nature are going to increase damage because of the way that Wrath of Nature works, and we'll get into that whenever we go over the skills. So if you find an amalgam that has 3 in Wrath of Nature it will be better. However, this one rolled as Spore Warden main, which we are using the Blizzard skill, so we are increasing that more. And the passives on this were really great. Area damage, gun damage, ability critical hit chance, and all damage dealt. The spell won't matter too much because of the spell that we're using. However, if you do want to swap out your spell and use one that does damage, the critical chance on that is really nice as well. For armor, we went with the body rune. So runes, whenever you are using those, anyone who also is using a rune armor will share those abilities. So I found the body rune, which is using when you kill an enemy, restore 15% of your maximum health, and deal 20% bonus fire damage for a short duration. With that, I wanted to get action skills active, frost damage, because of how much frost damage we're using and changing around weapons. I wanted to make sure that we were continuously getting the frost damage there because we're not really changing out our armor. It is just constantly up when we have that action skill going. However, there is a glitch going on right now where action skill is active is only 60 seconds. So if your action skill does last longer than 60 seconds, as of time of this video release, it is bugged and will be worked on in the future, I'm sure. For the amulet, I went over a lot of different amulets. I didn't know if I wanted it for damage specifically or if I wanted it for a specific ability. However, after a bunch of testing, I just really found I really like the skeep. Whenever your health is below 50%, you summon a sacrificial skeep, and this can only occur every 30 seconds. However, the skeep has two abilities that it does. It heals you for, I believe it's 6 pulses that heal you to full health. And if you're down when the skeep is out, you can shoot the skeep, thus the sacrificial part, to get yourself out of Save Your Soul. I did find one with frost damage, which helps out Blizzard that we're doing, and of course the liquid cooling we're using is also frost damage. And with the Spore Warden power, the status effect chance is also really nice, so that we can get our enemies that we're shooting frozen faster. And of course, gun handling is a decent secondary. A different secondary would be nice, like specifically gun damage or ability damage. However, gun handling is always nice. Now, let's get into the skills. So, we of course are using Spore Warden main, Berserker minor. We are using the Blizzard skill. We take 2 in Bounty of the Hunt, so anytime we get a kill, we get a little bit of action skill cooldown rate. 5 in Eagle Eye for the increased gun damage and gun handling. 5 in Bullseye for the increase in critical hit chance, and it also gives us a companion critical hit chance, which is really nice. 5 in Affinity for the ability damage. 1 in Medicinal Mushroom. And Medicinal Mushroom is really nice because it's kind of like lick the wounds from Borderlands 3, meaning your mushroom companion will attempt to revive you when you're down. And whenever they do revive you, it also gets some increased damage. 3 in Windrunner. Anytime that we get a kill, we get increased movement speed and fire rate. 1 in Headhunter for the gun damage and critical hit, increased to the critical hit areas. So anytime we're getting a critical hit, we're getting extra damage to that. And of course, 3 in Wrath of Nature. Like I was saying earlier, this is a very large and great thing on this build. So, anytime the Fate Maker deals ability damage to an enemy, the affected area takes increased damage from all sources for that duration. So, the duration is 12 seconds, and at a stack of 4 of 3, you get 72% increased damage. Now, we do have an armor that has 3 in Wrath of Nature. Let's find that real quick. So here's our 3 Wrath of Nature. 3 Wrath of Nature, that's going to bring it up to 6, which is 108% extra damage just for having that equipped. Now, personally, I really liked the damage that I've found using the amalgam with the extra passives there. However, you are going to see a bit of a damage increase because of that duration. Whenever that blizzard is hitting those enemies, it is going to do some pretty crazy damage. If you can find an amalgam with 3 instead of 1, that will do you so well. And we pick up the capstone, Play the Angles. The Fate Maker's critical hits, gun critical hits, have a chance to ricochet, dealing reduced ability damage. So there's a 35% chance for that to happen, and there's a 15% chance after that ricochet that another ricochet happens. On top of that, whenever that gun critical hit is ricocheting, it gets the gun damage and it gets the gun critical hit damage. On top of that, it also gets 50% of gun critical hit damage dealt as ability damage. Now, in the Berserker tree, we are picking up 5 out of 5 in Ancestral Frost for the extra frost damage, 3 in Icebreaker, so that any time we are dealing damage to an enemy that is slowed or frozen, it deals increased damage. So we're getting 30% extra against those frozen enemies. 5 in the Old Ways, so that anytime somebody is closer to us, we're dealing extra damage to them. So, and we are also picking up a damage reduction, which at max it's going to be 30%. So you can get 30% extra damage and 30% damage reduction the closer an enemy is to you. 3 in Cold Snap for increased movement speed and Frost Efficiency. And the Frost Efficiency is going to help out our Icebreaker and, of course, be helped out by our Ancestral Frost. So movement speed is increased by 9%, and the efficiency for our Frost is 24%. 1 in Relentless Rage, so that anytime we go into Save Your Soul, we are able to restore some of the Save Your Soul meter with dealing damage. This does kind of work like the BL3 Guardian Ring perk, where anytime you're dealing damage to something, your Save Your Soul meter is replenished a little bit, and it does diminish over time. For the last point, there's a couple places you could go. You could go into Unarmored Defense so that you get some extra health. You could go and get a little bit more melee damage for our Goblin Pickaxe. However, I really wanted to pick up Blood Frenzy so that anytime we get a kill, we are able to get extra health back based on our maximum health. So with 1 point in, we get 3% of our maximum health restored anytime we get a kill. Now, if you did want to, for some reason, use the Enrage on the Berserker side, that would also allow the Enrage timer to go down by a second, so that you could also have your Enrage back a little bit faster. So the last thing I want to look at is the myth ranks. Right now, I don't have my myth ranks completely maxed out. If you look over at the myth totals, you can see what we're looking at. So we're looking at 38, 39, 38, and 38 points total for the different areas here that we have. And when you look at this, it's going to let you know what exactly, percentage-wise, you have. So I've got spell critical damage at 1, frost damage is at 30% extra, effect chances at 21% extra, our dark magic damage is at 25.5% extra, melee is at 1, melee crit is at 1, our movement speed is at 25% extra with 2% extra reload speed, our companion damage is at 1.5 extra, and our loot luck is at 80% extra. With that, guys, that has been the first build. I hope you enjoyed. If you have a specific build you would like to see from me next, or have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps out the algorithm and helps the stream grow so that we can bring more to you guys. With that, guys, I have been your local Sassy Swinlaw. Stay classy, Bright Hoof.